So it is understood that the government possibly would go for an alternative that may involve the least possible cost and that would successfully, right, to the extent possible, meet the objectives, right, that would successfully address the problems, right? So that, of course, involves a lot of analysis and adopting the kind of studies and doing some kind of exercise wherein government brings in a lot of data. The government also may consult experts within the government, outside government, right? So all these things may involve, at a stage where the government is going to select a possible alternative to address the problem. But as I told you, government may choose none. Or if the government thinks that by doing nothing, it can still address the problem and meet its objectives, then the government may choose to do nothing as well, right? But I may add here that the cost benefit analysis is not simply in material terms, but also in terms of the larger normative values which may be involved in the whole issue. Okay, or maybe the kind of political cost that the government may be willing to accept in terms of addressing the problem, right? Or the government may be looking at larger political gains in terms of addressing the problem through the means of a particular alternative, right? So there may be various, the point I'm trying to highlight and make that there may be various considerations which the government would possibly pay attention to before selecting from among the alternatives, right? So that's what is the selection stage. Third stage, right? So right? Initiation after estimation, and after looking at the cost benefit analysis, when the government decides on a particular course of action or more than one alternatives or deciding not to do, as I told you. So that's what would be the stage of selection, right? The government has selected an alternative from among the alternatives which would serve a kind of policy intervention to address the problem at hand. Okay, so these are the three stages: initiation or invention, then estimation, and finally selection, right? Now implementation part comes, and therein, the government predominantly relies on bureaucracy to implement the policies. Okay. Is this? Mm. Third stage is about selection, right? It is closely related to the second stage. What has happened in the second stage? The government has looked at various alternatives which is presented before it, right, in terms of the possible solutions to the problem. Okay, when the government decides that one or more than one alternative is to be selected to address the problem, or the government decides that nothing is to be done, that's what is the selection stage. Okay, so selection stage in a way means the stage of decision making by the government. Okay, so the government has decided on a course of action, that this is what would be the right course of action in terms of addressing the problem. Okay, is it clear? Okay, fine. Now next, implementation part. Now, this implementation may require putting legislation in place, making rules and regulations, right? Then, giving directives to the bureaucracy, then actions on the part of bureaucracy in terms of putting the policy into effect, executing the policy, to say it another way, right? Then involving other agencies from among the non-governmental sector in order to implement the policy, right? All these things would be at the implementation stage in Brewer's view, right? So implementing the policy, what has been decided upon would now be put into action, would be enforced, right? That's what would be the implementation part. Okay, then evaluation part. Now this evaluation, no, as the fifth stage, right? As the fifth stage involves looking at the way policy was not only conceived as a problem, but also the way alternatives were suggested and selected, and finally it were implemented. Meaning that it is a kind of an assessment of the whole process. So there is an objective behind it, that why evaluation should be done. So, in the understanding of Brewer or other policy scientists, evaluation is required not only to provide the feedback to government and government agencies to help them in mid-course correction of a particular policy, but evaluation is also required in terms of making a decision that whether the policy is further required to be continued or not to be continued, right? So that is where Brewer brought the stage of evaluation before termination. So evaluation makes it clear that as far as the policy was concerned, to what extent it was successful in terms of meeting its objectives. Okay, where there are gaps. Was the gap at the level of conceiving the problem or choosing the alternative, right? Or were there problems at the implementation level? Is it possible to further modify either the objective or the way or means through which the policy is being implemented? So, in Brewer's view, all these things could be done only when the government has information and data on the status of the policy, how the policy is faring, how it is going about. So, it is with that respect that the stage of evaluation is brought before the stage of termination in Brewer's view, and then Brewer thinks that finally there may be a stage where the government may decide to terminate the policy once the government is satisfied that the required objectives have been met with, right? But as I told you in the beginning, that in his view it is not necessary that the policy would come to an end completely. So, as far as the objectives which may be initially involved in terms of deciding the policy to take a particular course of action, right, that objectives may still remain fulfilled in some respect or the other. So that is where, according to Brewer, at this stage, government may decide to merge part of the policy with other ongoing policies of the government, right? Or the government may decide to give the policy a new shape, right? Or the policy may again reappear in a different shape and in a different mode, which would again continue, because policy is something in Brewer's view that is something an ongoing process, right? So when we say cycle, we do not mean a beginning and an end, but we mean that it is something like like an ongoing cycle, and which is something would continue, right? Would continue.